Okay, there we go. I think I've got everybody. Okay, I've got 6 people. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so I've got 6 people. And I don't have Lexi. Is Lexi here? I don't see Lexi on the screen. Okay. Okay, we're recording now. Okay, I am Kathy Adams Clark, and I want to thank you all very much for coming and joining me tonight for class. I hope you have a good time. Don't be too nervous. No harm can come to you. Nobody has ever died from having to learn photography. So just, relax, chill out. Luckily, you're at your own house. You're in your own setting. And so you can just kind of relax and enjoy yourself. Lexi's coming in, so I'll give her just a second to come in. So Lexi, I see you coming in, so unmute. There you go, and turn your camera on when you get a chance. That way I can see you. Okay, so I am Kathy Adams Clark, and I'm your photography teacher for tonight and then next Monday night. And I want to welcome you to Basic Photography class. I've been teaching this class since 1995. Not obviously online the last 3 years since we got COVID or came into the COVID world. But I have taught this class all over the country and primarily here in Houston since 1995. I'm a professional photographer. This is what I do for a living. I went professional back in 1995 also. Cover of Texas Parks and Wildlife magazine several times, cover of Texas Highways magazine several times, calendars, my own calendars. My husband, Gary Clark, writes the column for the nature column for the Houston Chronicle, and I do all the photos for that. We've done that for the last 22 years. And we also have 10 books on the market. So other than teaching photography, I'm a busy photographer as well, and I'm primarily a nature photographer. So what we're going to do tonight, this is being recorded, and so in the morning, I will send the recording to you, and that way you can listen to it again. You can replay it all you want, and it'll be, you're just allowed to use it as much as you want to. Same thing with lesson 2. Next Monday night, I will record that as well, and I will pass that along to you as well. That way, if there's a part that you didn't get or you just zoned out on me, then you can always replay the recording and see what you might have missed. So I hope you have a good time tonight. I'd like you to just go ahead and keep your camera on, and go ahead, if you would, and keep your microphone on unless you've got a dog barking or something like that. That way it'll be a little bit easier when I'm asking questions to get answers back from you. I will also warn you that tonight I keep getting the unstable internet connection warning. And in the event that I freeze and, whatever happens, I'll just log back on as soon as I can. Okay. So just in case, these things happen. All of you all have done online before, so you all already know that. Okay. So tonight you are in class. You all are going to learn the manual method of photography, meaning that you are going to learn how to totally drive your camera without using any of the automated features except autofocus, which is the greatest thing that's ever been created in photography, and some other things like that. So otherwise, you're going to learn how to do manual exposure mode. And why you're going to learn manual exposure mode is that when you're out in the field photographing something, this red and green macaw down in Brazil is not going to stop for you while you try to figure out whether f-stop is the most important thing or shutter speed is the most important thing, because it's not waiting for you. And the same thing when that lioness raises her head up above the grass, she is not going to hold that pose until waiting for you to figure out whether you need to use this light meter mode or that light meter mode. The world is not going to stop for you as a photographer. So you need to be able to react You need to be able to look at a scene and immediately assess what needs to be done, because there's 4 major components in photography, and that's your light meter, that's your f-stop, that's your shutter speed, and that's your ISO. And notice that that's the first page of your handout. That's what we're going to learn tonight. So if you know which light meter to use for this scene, which shutter speed to use, which f-stop to use, and which ISO, then you're going to be able to capture the scene. Same thing for something as simple as the Milky Way. It's an incredibly easy photograph to do of the Milky Way, but you have to know whether it's your light meter or your f-stop or your shutter speed or your ISO that's going to give you the photo that you're looking for. So if it's something as simple as the kids doing something cute across the table, you have to react, you have to jump into action, and you have to be able to capture the scene. Is the ISO the most important thing, or is the shutter speed, or is the f-stop, or is the light meter the most important thing? And that's why we're going to learn those 4 major components in photography. Then you can start being creative, and then you can start doing things, that look a little bit different. When the solar eclipse comes about in October, if you've got all these skills down, then the solar eclipse going through Texas in October is going to be a piece of cake for you. But you've got to know which ones are the most important elements on your camera. And is it your light meter, your f-stop, your shutter speed, or your ISO that's going to give you the shot? So when you travel and you're going to exotic places, like I do photo tours up to Norway so that we can see the northern lights, you have to know which one of those 4 components is going to give you the shot that you're looking for. And northern lights, by the way, are super easy to photograph. Very, very easy once you get your camera all set. So you can, venture off into all kinds of amazing different places that you can go with photography. Like I've got a class coming up on crystal ball photography, teach you how to photograph through a crystal ball. Or if you just want to try to do something as silly as put your cat in front of some Christmas lights and take a Christmas card of him, then all you need to know are those 4 things: that light meter, that f-stop, that shutter speed, that ISO, how they all pull together. And then from there on, you can venture off into this wonderful world of photography. So these are the 4 components that I'm going to teach you tonight. Did you find almost everything on your handout? Did you find them? Think so?
I think I did.
Good, good. Juana said she did. Everybody got almost everything? Lexi, did you get almost everything? Still haven't heard from Lexi yet. Okay. Okay.
I don't see her.
I just see her little icon down there. So hopefully she'll pop in so we can see her. Okay. So let's do just some quick review of your camera. And I'm just going to show you some pictures of your camera. And then I'm going to show you a couple of little things that I just want you to remember and remember where they are. So as I'm talking about them, then you know your camera. So turn your camera on, put your camera in your hands, if you would. Almost all of you all have got this fold out screen. We do not photograph with the screen folded out. No, 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 we do not. It's clumsy, it's awkward, and it takes a lot of time. So you're going to fold your screen back and put it against the body of the camera. And we want the screen facing out at you, but we don't want it hanging off to the side, because that's just a really awkward way for you to take pictures. You can't hold your camera steady the way that you need to if that thing's hanging out to the side. So fold it back, because we don't use that. But yeah, you do want the screen facing out at you, because we will use that a lot. And then up here at the top of your viewfinder on every one of your cameras, there's a diopter. And that was one of the things on your handout. Let me see, for Jennifer, you're the only Nikon in the class. It's a lever. And for all of you Canons, it's a dial. And it's a little bitty dial or a little lever right up here by the viewfinder. And when you look through the viewfinder, push the button halfway down and then rotate that little dial or move that little lever up and down. You are adjusting the view through the viewfinder for your eye prescription. So if you hand your camera to somebody else, they may not be able to see clearly through the viewfinder. So you push your button down, your shutter button down, that just turns on the lights inside your viewfinder. And now you rotate that little dial or the little lever, whichever one you have on your camera, until all the lights at the bottom of the screen are nice and clear for your eye prescription. Everybody got that one? Shake your head up and down. Tell me yes. Yeah. Yeah. Good, 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 good. Okay. That just lets me know that y'all are with me. Okay. So just shake your head up and down. Tell me yes. Now, remember, you hand that camera to somebody else, they're not going to be able to see through the viewfinder because their eye prescription is different from yours. And so, you know, just don't think that you pick up a camera and start immediately using somebody else's camera because the viewfinder may not be adjusted. I've had people also tell me that they just earned the money for the class right there because they'd never been able to see through the viewfinder before and didn't understand why people look through the viewfinder. Well, that's because you didn't adjust the little diopter. Okay. By the way, if your eyes get tired, your eyes get dry, you might have to do a little minor adjustment. So if you notice that all those numbers in the bottom of your viewfinder are getting a little blurry, just do a little minor adjustment, get them nice and clear. So that's your diopter. Okay, Lexi, on your camera, this is what the front of your camera looks like. So she has the M50. And your shutter dial is right up here. And then your flash is right up here. We'll come to that in lesson a little bit later on in lessons. And then Lexi, on the back of your camera, I want you to pull up the display panel that looks like this. Canons, all of you all have the same display panel on the back. And you're either pushing the Q button or the info button 1, 2, 3 times. And that gives you this display panel. This is the display panel that we're going for in your Canon cameras. Everybody that's using a Canon has this display panel on the back of their camera. Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. Lexi, you have this display panel on the back of your camera? Still haven't heard Lexi. Juana, you have it on yours?
So
Yeah. Melissa Whitley?
we have it on one of our cameras, but we have not figured out how to get it on the 10D.
On the 10D, if you're on the 10D on the back, you push the info button 1 time, 2 times, or 3 times.
Okay, thank you.
Got it? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Good, 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 good. And also on all the Canons, there's a button that looks like this. It's a rectangle with 9 little dots in the middle of it, or 5 little dots in the middle of it. And it's always over on the right-hand side, top right-hand side. And that is the button that you will use to move your focus points around. All of you Canons have exactly the same button, and it's in roughly the exact same spot. And that allows you to move your focus points around. See how that works, Jola? Yep, I saw you put your thumb in the right spot, so I figured you had it in the right place. Okay, and then the Rebel XTI, Whitley, this is your camera, correct? That you've got, the XTI? Which
I
one?
have the XTI.
You've got the XTI, okay, good, okay. Okay. Melissa and Whitley, which one's which? Who's Melissa and who's
I'm
Whitley?
Melissa.
Oh, you're Melissa and you're Whitley. Okay, your
We-
names are reversed on the screen. Okay,
Oh,
so
yeah,
Melissa's over there and Whitley's over there. Okay, gotcha. Okay, so on the XTI, you've got your back screen as well. This little button right here for all of you Canons, it's a rectangle with a parentheses and a dot in the middle of it for all you Canon users. This is your light meter, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. And then here's your focus button right over, or not focus button, but the individual focus selection button, once again, right over here at the top right-hand side. And then this right here in the middle is called your set button for all of you Canon users. And then up on the top, here's your ISO button on the Rebel TI. And then which one is this? Oh yeah, the T6. So we've got something very, very similar in Juana's camera, your T6 on yours. And once again, here's where we're going to move your individual focus points around. And then here's your set button right here. Your display button allows you to bring that screen up on the back that I showed you earlier. And then the Q button allows you to move between each one of your items. And then here's the T6 on the top of it. And then Juana here, right here is how you're going to pop your flash up eventually. This little flash button right there.
Yeah.
Some of these things you might have already found. And then the, Craig, you've got the 7, the Rebel 7, correct?
I don't know, it says 2000D, but it looks exactly
Yeah,
like what
it's
you
the
were just showing
2000,
a
it's
second
the
ago, but
2000D in the European model, but it's a Rebel 7 for us. And so yours looks
Okay,
a lot
okay.
like what the other 2 cameras were. Here, once again, is what your display screen
Yes.
looks like on the back. And on the Rebel 7, you've got
Right.
2 display screens, and one of them's called guided and one of them's called standard. And we want to be on the standard right here. And then on all of you Canon users, to move around these items on the back of the screen, once you get the screen up, you push this Q button, and then you toggle with any of these little toggle switches right here. Those allow you to move around through the different menu items on the back of the camera, and then you push set to change it or select it. I'm sure you've already figured that one out, but just in case you haven't, that's how you do that one. And then the 10D, Whitley, did you get the 10D? Or Melissa, you got the 10D? Yeah. Okay. So the
Whitley has it.
10D, we're functioning pretty similar to what the other cameras were that I was showing you, except the difference in the 10D is this big, huge dial right back here. Changes your f-stop and make sure that it is unlocked. So you don't want to leave it locked. You want to make sure that it's unlocked. And then on the 10D also up on the top, you notice that you've got some main buttons for autofocus and some other things up here on the top. And then on the 10D, here is where you're going to pop your flash up. Right here's this little lightning bolt button when we come to that eventually. Okay. And then the 90D, there we go. So Jola, you've got the 90D. So on the 90D, everything's just like I've been talking about, except this big, huge dial on the back, you notice that now you don't have those little toggles on the back, but you've got a big dial and it's got little toggles inside of it. And your outside of the dial is where you're going to change your f-stop. And then your Q will turn on the display screen that's right there. And then when you want to move around anything on the display, excuse me, your info button, push your info button 3 times and that'll bring up the display screen on the back. And then press your Q button and then you can move around any of the items on the back simply by toggling this little thing with your thumb. So you can move around on all your display items on the back. So that's your 90D. And that's the top of your 90D. And just like the 10D, you have some buttons on the top, like your autofocus, your drive, your ISO, and here's your light meter button right there up on the top. And then your changing your focus point around is right up here in the front. So on this one camera model, Canon moved it to the front. And then Jennifer, don't feel like you're alone. you're the Nikon user in the class. So on your camera, on your 3200, up on the top, you've got an info button that'll help you to bring up your back display panel as well. And then when I'm talking about over and exposure and under exposure and then f-stop, here's your plus minus button. You see that plus minus button right in the front there? where my cursor is. Okay.
Yes.
That'll change your
Yes.
f-stop. And then on your back, I didn't know whether you had the red one or not, but I thought the red one looked nice and fancy compared to all the other black cameras. You've got the red one? Okay, you did.
I do have the red. Yes.
You've got it. Okay, so your back dial is how you're going to change your shutter speed. I'm sorry. And then
Mhm.
to pull up this screen on the back, you use your I button. And then if I'm not mistaken,
Okay.
Jennifer, you pull up your screen on the back with your info button, correct? And then when you get
Yes.
this screen right here, you push the I button, and the I button lets you move up and down this little column over here, correct?
Okay. Yes.
Yes. Okay. And then when you get
Yes,
to the one you
absolutely.
want to
Mhm.
change, you push in the OK button, and then you can make your changes on all those little items over there on the right-hand side. Okay.
Okay.
Good. Good, 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 good.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. Now, that's just a brief overview of each one of your cameras. So now I want you to turn your camera on. Everybody's in the manual mode, right? The M mode, not manual autofocus, not manual on the lens, just on the body, the M mode, right? Everybody's there? Okay.
Yep.
I want you to
Yes.
look through the viewfinder, and I want you to push your button halfway down, your shutter button halfway down. And when you push your shutter button halfway down, I want you to notice that all of you all have a little scale that looks like what you're seeing on the screen. It may not look exactly like what you're seeing on the screen, but it looks much like what you're seeing on the screen. See down here, this little scale that has a -3 and a +3 on either side of it. And then it's got a little kind of it's a little kind of scale thing. Everybody sees that? Tell me yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Good,
Yeah.
good, good. Okay, that's called your light meter. Now, your light meter is trying to talk to you, and it's saying, okay, human, I'm the machine, and I'm trying to tell you that if you put me in the middle, I'll give you a perfectly exposed image. But we have to know how to put that scale in the middle so that the camera can give us a properly exposed image. So that little scale that you see in the bottom of your viewfinder is going to tell you whether or not you are properly exposed. Is your picture too bright, or is your picture too dark, or is your picture properly exposed? And so that light meter scale is trying to talk to you. Put your camera down for just a second, because you have 3 to 4 different types of light meters inside your camera, and each one of them reads the light in a completely different way. So look on your handout with me for just a moment. Looking through your viewfinder, oops, first of all, this is the icon that we're looking for. So it is and you don't have to push anything right now. I just want to know I just want you to show y'all what we're looking for. But it's this little rectangle, and it has a dot and parentheses on either side of it. Jennifer, in your camera, it's on the back of your camera and you can see it. And it's a rectangle, and it has 5 segments in it. You see that on the back of your camera, Jennifer?
Mhm.
Okay, good,
Yeah.
good, good. So
Yes.
don't push anything right now, because you all should already be set. But just in case you didn't know where that little button was, that's where it is. So what your and where I want you to be set, all you Canons, I want you to be set on evaluative. Jennifer, yours is called matrix, and everybody else Canon, it's called evaluative. Now, this is what your light meter does. Inside the camera, there is this little device that reads the light coming through the front of your lens. So that little device reading the light that comes through the front of your lens was developed back in the 1950s. Prior to the 1950s, Photographers had to hold a handheld light meter out in front of them. My father used to do that all the time. They had to then look at that light meter, then they had to go back to their camera and make all kinds of changes. In the 1950s, engineers put that light meter inside the box, inside the camera. So we don't need a handheld light meter anymore. The first light meter that was created by engineers and put inside the box was called a center weighted light meter. It's the very first light meter that I put on your handout for you. A center weighted light meter reads all the light in the entire frame, like in this photograph. And then it averages it based on, with giving a little bit more weight to what's right here in the center weighted light meter. So it just averages all the light. It takes the average of that sun and mixes it with that black and just averages all the light together. But what happens if we mix white paint with black paint? Like if we had that white sun and those dark shadows, what color do we get?
Probably gray.
Yeah, it's
Gray.
not a trick question. If we mix white with black, we get gray. Everybody knows that. Same thing happens with center weighted light meter. If we mix that bright sun with that shadows, it's okay, but it's not great. So the center weighted light meter was the earliest light meter that was created by engineers. And so that is the light meter we do not use. So just go ahead and put yourself a line through your handout on that, because that's one light meter we do not use. But then in the late 1970s, early 1980s, engineers created this brand new type of light meter, started putting it in these cameras. And this was called a spot light meter. So this spotlight meter only read the light in that spot, or only reads the light in that spot. It ignores the sun. It ignores the shade. It ignores all the other colors and light around that circle, and it only reads the light in that circle right there. So then when you're balancing your light meter, dialing in your f-stop and dialing in your shutter speed, then you're doing it based on whatever light is right there in that circle if you have the spot light meter set. Nikon got to the patent office first and called it spot. Canon had to call it partial. So Jennifer, and your camera, it's called spot. Everybody else's camera, it's called partial. And what that partial or that spot meter is doing is only reading what's right there in that spot and ignoring everything else. We're going to use that about 1% of the time. We're not going to use it very often at all. We're going to use it if the background is super, super dark and my subject is light, as if, for an example, would be if a subject were in a spotlight on a stage, very dark stage, and the subject's in a spotlight. Perfect example of when we use the spot meter. So we would punch our button, rotate our dial, go to spot if you're Nikon, go to partial if you're a Canon. And now the light meter is only going to read that spot right there in the center of the frame. When I worked my way through college as a baby photographer in Kmart and Walmart in southern Louisiana, the cameras we had a spot meter in them. And the company I worked for started introducing solid black backgrounds. So we put the kids in front of solid black backgrounds, and we put the kids in front of solid white backgrounds. And what happened with the camera and how we were able to do this is that I put the spot meter on the kid's face. And so no matter what color the kid was, we got a perfectly exposed face, and the background went black or the background went white. And because that was new and nobody else was doing that, we made a ton of money. So we did it through using the spot meter. So the only time that I would use spot or partial is if I had a very, very dark subject against a really, really light background, or a very light subject against a very dark background. So I would only do this if I had a lot of contrast between the scene that I was photographing, which doesn't happen very often. So in that spot meter, just give yourself a little 1%, because we're not going to use this one very much at all. But we are going to use the latest and greatest technology. And this is called Matrix for Jennifer in her Nikon camera. And this is called Evaluative for all of you Canon users. So what the Matrix or the evaluative light meter does is it reads all the light in this segment and averages it all together. And then it reads all the light in this segment and averages it together. And it reads all the light in this segment and averages it, and all the light in this segment and averages it, and all the light in this segment and averages it. So what's happening with this new technology is instead of just looking at the whole scene, we're looking at segments of the scene. Melissa and Whitley, you all have the Canon 10D, which was the original digital SLR in the Canon line. And it was reading 5 segments, exactly that. But on the other hand, who's got it? Jola, you've got the 90D, right? On your camera? And
Right.
Jola's camera, because it's newer, her camera is reading 64 segments. So the newer your camera is, the more segments it's reading. And the new mirrorless cameras even know that this is a bright segment and this is a dark segment. And they even know how to make corrections inside those dark segments and light segments. So this evaluative and matrix light meter just gets better and better and better with each new model of camera and the engineers working with it. So that's why I'm going to suggest you just leave your camera set on your evaluative or your matrix light meter and don't fiddle around with that button. Just leave it set on evaluative or matrix. So Jennifer is matrix, everybody else is evaluative. Now, when you look through the viewfinder, you're going to get a much, much better idea of whether or not that camera is really leading you to a properly exposed image. So to give you an example of the variation you can get, this photograph was done with the evaluative light meter. I'm a Canon user, and I did one other thing. If I pointed my camera at the scene with the spot or partial light meter turned on and activated and balanced my light meter, put that little scale that I showed you before right in the middle, then that's what my picture would have looked like. So the difference between the two photographs is simply what light meter I was using. The one on the left is I'm using my evaluative or my matrix light meter, and then I did one other thing. The one on the right, I used my spot meter, and me, the person with the brain, told the camera perfectly expose this area right here where my cursor is. And that's exactly what it did. And the one over on the right is what I saw with my eye. The one on my left is the creative photograph I was trying to create. And so you've got to think of it also of what you're trying to create as a photographer. So your light meter will get you closer to creating that photograph that you're looking for. So we're going to leave all of our cameras set on evaluative if you're a Canon user, matrix if you're a Nikon user. And then when you look at a scene like this barn owl, that's a light subject against a very dark background, this is one where you might ask yourself, do I need to change to my spot meter? But right now I'm going to tell you most of the time you don't have to do that. It's more like when the performer is in the spotlight, when it's that much drastic difference between the lighting sources. But in this case of the barn owl against the dark background, your evaluative matrix or matrix light meter should be able to handle everything. So looking on the back of your camera, the display panel on the back of your camera, do you have your evaluative or matrix light meter set? Yep. You can see the little icon.
Yes.
Good. Okay.
Yeah.
Super. Okay. So we got that one out of the way. Now that's kind of a boring thing, but also if you don't know that it's there, it can lead you astray a lot. So let's dive into making these pictures look better. So if you look at this photograph of this malachite butterfly, oops, there you go. Sorry. If you look at this photograph of this malachite butterfly, you notice how the background is all blurry. You notice how the background, what's in the back, what's that stuff in the background? What's that tan stuff in the background? Speak up. Come on, what is it? Jola's got her forehead all scrunched down, so she doesn't have any idea what it is, right? Anybody know what that brown stuff is in the background?
A
That tan
fence?
stuff? Huh? What'd you say, Craig?
Is it a fence?
Fence?
Is it a fence?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
is-
yeah. Yeah, you know, it's not important. And it's not important because it doesn't have anything to do with the photograph. It's gravel in the parking lot. But I don't want
Oh.
you to go back and start looking at gravel. I want you to look at the butterfly and I want you to look at the little flower that it's sitting on. And I don't want you to go back there and look at that gravel. Anything that you let the viewer see in your photograph, the viewer is going or can get distracted by it. So anything that is in focus, the viewer will study with their eye. You're probably doing that right now. You're studying the butterfly, you're studying the leaf, and you're studying the flower. Anything that is out of focus or soft, the viewer will not study. So when we are designing our photographs, we design them so that where we want the viewer to look is in focus, and where we want the viewer not to look is out of focus. Or we don't include things that we don't want the viewer to look at. The human brain is very curious and it'll look at anything in a photograph that is in focus and it'll ignore everything that is out of focus. So the way that we place things out of focus in photographs is through what's called our f-stop. So next thing on your handout, let me explain your f-stop or your depth of field. So one of those handouts that I gave you, I'd like you to flip your paper over, if you would, for me, please. And grab yourself a pen or something that you can write with. And I'd like you to draw this graph on the back side of that paper. Make it horizontal because and give yourself plenty of room to write. You're going to draw a straight line going across, but you're going to have to write all kinds of stuff down here in the bottom. Same thing over here on the left-hand side. You're going to have to write all kinds of stuff as we go along. So give yourself some room and draw yourself a horizontal line. And then underneath that horizontal line, write these numbers: 2.8, 3.5, 4.5, 5.6, 6.8, 8, 11, 16, 22, and 32. And then you've got a vertical line going straight up. And next to that, you're going to write 500, 250, 125, 60, 30, 15, 8, 4, 0.3 with quotation marks, 2 with quotation marks, and then the word bulb. Okay. So these numbers that you see, 2.8, 3.5, 4.5, 5.6, 6.8, 11, 16, 22, and 32. These are called f-stops. So you can put the word f-stop right out by the side of that. And it's F with a flourish, kind of a fancy italics F, with a slash mark, and then the word stop. And f-stops are what you and I talk about. What f-stop are you going to use? Oh, I think I'm going to use a 3.5. Craig, what f-stop did you use on that photo? I used an f11. Kathy, what f-stop do you think we should use to get this shot? Well, let's see if let's start out with a 16. So the numbers that you and I talk about, f-stops, these are the numbers that we talk about and we communicate with. In your photograph, when you download it into your computer, you'll be able to open your photograph and you'll be able to see what f-stop you used. F-stop is based on your lens. So it's all relative to your lens. So f/stop, the numbers are the numbers that you and I see, the numbers you and I talk about, and the numbers that later on you'll be able to see on your computer, on your photographs. Notice too that it's an f/stop. That is an F, the function symbol in math, division symbol, and then the word stop. It's a mathematical formula, but luckily you never, ever, ever have to learn the mathematical formula. I have a very advanced class where I teach people the math formula, and most people, that's the first time that they've ever, ever, ever done the math. So you never have to worry about it because you don't have to ever know the math on this one. So f-stops are the number you see on the back of the camera, you see through the viewfinder, and f-stops are the numbers that you and I talk about. Under the hood, one more time, I'm going to take you under the hood because I think it's important that you know what's going on behind the scenes. Under the hood, there's this thing called aperture, and it's in your lens, not in the camera body, it's in your lens. And that aperture closes down, opens up to a really, really big hole when you dial in a 2.8, and it lets in a lot of light. And when you dial down to 3.5, the hole gets a little smaller, so it lets in a little less light. And when you dial down to 4.5, the hole gets a little bit smaller. And when you go to 5.6, the hole gets a little bit smaller, and this is called your aperture opening. And when you go to 6.8, it gets a little smaller. And when you go to 8, it gets a little smaller. And when you go to 11, it gets a little smaller. And 16, it gets a little smaller. And 22, it gets a little smaller. And at 32, it's just a pinprick. So this is called your aperture.
So that's on any lens?
On any lens. So it's how much light is coming through that opening in the base of your lens, and it's in the base of every lens that you own. So this is called an aperture in your lens. But the cool thing that happens is this thing called depth of field, D-E-P-T-H of field, 3 words, depth of field. And when you dial in a 2.8 and you let a whole lot of light come through that aperture, the area in focus is about a 1/16 of an inch. So give yourself, just draw a little teeny weeny line underneath 2.8 and underneath that big circle for your aperture. Give yourself a little teeny weeny line. And when you go to 3.5, you get a little bit more depth of field. Depth of field is the area in focus. And when you go to 4.5, you get a little bit more depth of field, area in focus. And when you go to 5.6, you get a little bit more area depth of field. And when you go to 6.8, you get a little bit more. And under 8, make yourself a nice fat little line underneath 8. Because under F8 or F8, There's an old saying in photography, F8 and be there, which means just put that camera on F8. Most stuff will be in focus. Nobody will ever notice whether something's in focus or totally out of focus. Most stuff will be in focus and most of your pictures will look okay. So that's what the program mode does, for instance, the P mode, which I'm not going to let you all use. That's why you're having to learn all this stuff. So the P mode just puts you at F8. Most stuff's going to be in focus. Nothing's going to be shallow depth of field. Nothing's going to be kind of nice and blurry in the background. Most stuff's going to be in focus. But that's boring. F11 gives you more stuff in focus. F16 gives you more stuff in focus. F22 gives you more stuff in focus. And by the time you get to F32, give yourself an infinity symbol at F32. Just put yourself an infinity symbol under F32. Because if you dial F32 into your f-stop on your lens, then the area in front of your lens, all the way to the mountains, if we had mountains, is going to be in focus. So everything will be in focus if you have F32. Now notice how those three lines don't make a lot of sense together. 2.8 is a little number, big opening, shallow depth of field. You see that? 32, that's a big number, teeny weeny opening, lots of depth of field. See how that, they don't quite work with each other? The way you can remember this is that at 2.8, two things are in focus. And at 32, 32 things are in focus. The bigger the number, the more stuff is in focus. The smaller the number, the less stuff is in focus. So if you only want a little bit of the photograph to be in focus, you would use a 3.5 or a 4.5 or a 5.6. If you wanted everything to be in focus, like you were doing some landscapes, then you would use a 32 or a 22. If you're kind of in the middle, you just want most stuff to be in focus, then you would use a 6.8, 8, or 11. So your f-stop determines how much is going to be in focus and how much is not going to be in focus. Your f-stop determines how creative you are going to be with this photograph or how mundane you're going to be with this photograph. So your f-stop allows you to blow things out of focus, to make things nice and soft in the background, or your f-stop allows you to have everything throughout the entire photograph in focus. And remember, people look at what's in focus. That's why we use an f32 on landscapes, so people can look at everything in your photograph. Make sense? So far, kind of?
Yes.
You're hanging with me?
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay, good.
I do have
So-
one question, though.
Yes, go
Can I
ahead.
ask you one question, Kathy? You know, when we were looking through the lens and you had that little scale that came up that was depending on which camera, but on mine, it starts with a -3 and then goes to a +3.
Yeah.
When you look through, it was two, it was the same thing, -2 to +2. Is that supposed to be anywhere in particular? Should it be in the middle?
It's
of
going to be in
line?
the
Is
middle.
that- it
It's
almost
going to
looks
be
like
in the
it's a
middle
ruler.
eventually. Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be in the middle eventually, but don't get
But
ahead
not-
of me. Not yet.
But-
Okay. Not yet.
Okay, no, okay. I just was curious if I
Yeah.
did something wrong when you said it.
No, you haven't
Thanks.
done anything wrong. No, you haven't done anything wrong. So your f-stop controls how your photograph is going to look. And by the way, you don't see this through the lens. You don't see this through the viewfinder. You have to visualize it in many cases. So in this photograph where I'm doing the head of a statue, so you see that the front hand is out of focus. Notice that? And then you see that the background is out of focus. What's in the background?
It's hard to say.
What's in the background?
Not sure what that is.
Yeah,
Bra?
you're not supposed to. It's like the wall of a villa. You're not
Good
you're
questions.
not supposed, it's not supposed to draw your attention. What's supposed to draw your attention is the statue of the lady. So this was an f5.6, by the way, and 5.6 is one of my favorite f-stops to use. That's why I have all of you all set right now. And it's the only reason you're set there right now is because every lens gets 5.6. So that's the only reason that you're on 5.6 right now. But imagine if a butterfly landed on this statue's finger, and I wanted the finger with the butterfly plus the statue's face to be in focus. That's when I would have to change my f-stop to maybe an 8 or an 11. And now my background is going to become more in focus because I'm increasing my depth of field. So by changing my f-stop, I can include more in the photograph, more stuff in focus in the photograph. Look at this little picture of a little girl or photograph of a little girl. So first of all, what f-stop do you think I'm using? Just take a guess. No right or wrong answer. Jump in. Look at your chart. What f-stop do you think I'm using?
4.5.
I would think it.
Which one?
The lower one, 2.8.
2.8. Melissa, what'd you say?
I said like 3 or the 3.5 and
Like
4.5.
3.5. Okay. Yeah. So you and Craig are kind of both going the same direction. We're going down toward the lower numbers on the scale, right? And you're absolutely right. So this is just, for me, it's an F4, simple F4. Now notice F4, I'm focused on her face, and notice that her earrings are out of focus. You see that? So on this little 2-year-old kid, if I focus on her eyes, that area between her eyes going back to her earlobes is out of focus. So my F4 in this case is probably her nose to her, the depth of her nose to her eyes. So you see how shallow this is? So it's pretty shallow. Now notice what's in the back. What do you think's in the back there?
Planters.
Planters, exactly. But see, I don't want you to see those planters, because if I let you see those planters and you spent the weekend looking for planters, then you're going to be going, that is exactly what I was looking for. None of those big stores had it over the weekend. That's the exact same planter I'm looking for. And if you get back there in the back and start shopping for planters, I have lost you from looking at my photograph. So knowing that, I intentionally selected a small f-stop so that I could blow the background out of focus. The further you are away from your background, the more you can blow it out of focus. The closer you are to your background, the harder it will be to blow it out of focus. So when I saw that this little girl was 8, 10, 15 feet away from those planters back there, then I knew that I could blow them out of focus. I also gently repositioned myself. She's looking at some other adults that are with me. She's watching them. I repositioned myself to put more space between me and the background. The more space there is between your subject and the background, the more you're going to be able to blow it out of focus. The closer your background is to you, the harder it's going to be to blow it out of focus. So we as photographers position our subjects 8, 10, 15 feet away from their background, use a shallow depth of field, a shallow f-stop, and then that way we can blow that background out of focus. So it's all intentional. This is going through your head while you're moving around trying to get the shot that you're looking for. So here you see, once again, blowing the background out. And it's not important that I show you the swing. It's not a commercial for a swing. 20 years later, we don't care what the swing looked like. 20 years later, we want to see her. And you see the background. I, photographer, have positioned her 8, 10, 15 feet away from her background. And I'm using my f-stop of a 4, a 4.5, or a 5.6 to blow that background out of focus. And now we're just looking at her. So the way that you attack your photograph or the way that you design your photograph determine how it's going to look. So if you use an f4, your photograph's going to look like this. If you use a 22, it's going to look like this. If you use a 4, it's going to look like that. If you use a 22, it's going to look like that. If you use an f4, it's going to look like that. If you use an f22, it's going to look like that. So a 4 gives you that. A 22 gives you that. So which one you choose and how you decide to which f-stop you choose determines which photograph you're going to get. And sometimes I don't know when I'm in the field, so I do them both ways. So an f4, f22, okay? So your f-stop determines how much the background is going to be in focus or how much it's going to be out of focus. Make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I want you to put your camera in your hand, if you would, please. Jennifer, that's my cat. I saw yours in the background there. Yeah. So put your camera in your hand, if you would, please. Now the 10D and the 90D. So you all are what I call 2-dial cameras. You have that big dial in the back and you have that front dial with your finger. So you have a dial for your forefinger and you have a dial for your thumb in the back. So the 10D and the 90D, you all are 2-dial cameras. Rotate the back dial in the back and you'll notice that your f-stop changes on that back display panel. Shake your head up and down if that's true. Jola, is it doing it? Good. Melissa, is
Yeah,
it
it
doing
is.
it?
It's the back one we have to twist.
Now, everybody else, I want you to push and hold your plus/minus button. And for you rebels, your plus/minus button is in the middle of the back, right at the top right-hand corner of the display panel. There's an AV plus/minus button. Push and hold that and rotate your dial. Jennifer, yours is plus/minus button in the front and you rotate your thumb dial. Correct? Yay. Okay. Is your f-stop
Lost me.
changing? Is it rotating? Is it changing? Yes? Good. Tell me what the smallest f-stop you can get. So Jola and Whitley, you all are rotating your big dial in the back. Everybody else is pushing and holding the plus/minus button and rotating the dial in the front. Jennifer, your plus/minus button is in the front with your thumb. Everybody else, the Canons, the plus/minus button is in the back. You have to push, you have to mash it with your thumb and rotate the dial at the same time. Okay, so what's the smallest f-stop you can get?
4.
4, good.
3.5 for me.
3.5, good.
The smallest I see is 5.0.
The smallest you see is 5.0, good. Juana and Craig, what's the smallest number you see?
I'm doing something wrong because I'm not pushing the right button to do anything with it.
You're in the manual mode up on the top, right? The M mode?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now,
Yes.
on the back of the camera with your thumb, there is a plus/minus button right at the top of the top right-hand
Okay,
corner.
I see it now.
Yeah, push that with your thumb and then rotate
Right.
your front dial with your forefinger. Juana, what's the smallest f-stop you can get?
I guess 5.6.
5.6,
Maybe that's
good.
not it.
Craig, what's the smallest f-stop you can get?
Mine's on 5.6, but it's not doing anything else. I don't know what I did wrong here.
Now, everybody who got your
Because-
5, okay, did you get it? Craig,
No. Mm-mm.
try rotating the dial.
The two buttons that you, there's two dials. The one that's got the plus minus, that's a dial on mine, not a button. I mean, like, it's not something I can push in. So I've got to roll it one way or the other, and the other one is the dial on the front right above where the button is that I was actually taking a photo.
And you're the Rebel
So
7. You're the
when I
Rebel 7.
dial, yeah, I mean, that's what you said it was. It was called a 2000D. You said that was the European one.
Yeah, turn your
But
camera around
if
so
I
it's
rotate
facing,
the dial,
turn your
if I
camera
rotate the
around.
dial, it goes, oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I want. A little bit more so I can see the back of the camera, please. A little bit more. Up, 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 over, 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 over. There you go. There you go. There you go. There you go. That's what I want. Whoa, no, no, no. Over a little bit more so I can see this way, this way. All I'm seeing is the there. Okay. Up at the top right of the display panel, top right of the display panel, there should be, you keep moving it so I can't say, yeah. Yeah, there you go. There should be right above the Q button. What's the button right above the Q button? Turn it around towards you, and what's the button right above the Q button?
No, it's a good one, thank you.
I told you I'd be your biggest
That's
technological
okay.
challenge tonight.
That's okay. What's the button right above the Q?
See any Q, Kathy? I mean, what this button change, the one in the front changes 1/125, 100, 180, 50, 40, 30, 25, 20,
I'm going to back
13,
up.
15, 16,
Here,
15.
wait, Craig. I'm going to back up to your camera just so we can get it. So we can move on. There we go.
All right.
That's. This is yours. See this AV right here? Plus minus button?
Yes,
Punch it with your
Yes.
thumb. Punch it with your thumb.
and then
And then
I got it
rotate
in.
your front dial. Hold it in with your thumb and
Okay,
rotate the
thank
front
you.
dial.
All right.
Okay.
So-
Okay. I knew it was
the
there.
lowest it goes to is F4. Yep, F4.
Okay. Good. Now, while I'm catching up, I want you to, everybody, zoom your lens. Zoom your lens. Take your lens in your hand, zoom your lens. And when you zoom your lens all the way in or all the way out, just zoom your lens the complete opposite direction. And now tell me what smallest f-stop you can get. Zoom your lens in or all the way in or all the way out.
5.6 now.
5.6 now. Yeah.
5.6.
5.6. Good.
I didn't.
When you zoom all the way in or all the way
The
out,
lowest you said or the highest?
what's the new, when you zoom all the way in or all the way out, what's the biggest, the lowest number you can get now? Jola,
Oh,
I got 5.6 also.
pardon? Which one?
I got 5.6 also.
You got 5.6. Jennifer?
5.6.
5.6. And originally you had a 3.5, right?
Yes.
Yeah, good. And Juana, what's yours when you zoom in and out?
5.6.
5.6, but then you had a 3.5 the other time,
Yeah.
right?
Okay, let me see.
You can see all this through the viewfinder. Get used to looking through the viewfinder.
3.5.
3.5. Okay, all of you all have what are called variable f-stop lenses. So that means that when you are zoomed, so everything's wide, so you can see your whole room, then you can probably get like a 3.5, your small number, whatever small number you all told me. When you zoom out so that you're more telephoto, so that you're looking at more, you know, a picture on the wall instead of the whole room, the smallest f-stop you can get is 5.6. Now rotate your f-stop and go, what's the biggest number you can get? When you rotate your f-stop dial, what's the biggest number you can get?
38.
38, yeah.
38. Wow.
What's the biggest?
36.
36, good. So we got 36 and a 38. What's the biggest number you can get?
25.
25,
I have,
Mhm.
I have 22.
22, okay.
Mine's 20, mine's
20.
22.
22, Jennifer?
When I'm zoomed all the way in, it's 36, but out
36.
it's 22.
22 and 36. So these are called variable f-stop lenses. And if you all would zoom so that you're seeing the room as wide as you can, so zoom back, and that would put you at like 18 or something like that. And then put your f-stop back at 5.6 if you would. So what a variable f-stop lens does is a variable f-stop lens has a smallest f-stop when you're wide and a new smaller f-stop when you get a bit more telephoto. The same thing on the back end, a big number and a smaller number. This keeps the price of your lens down, and it also makes your lens lighter. So it keeps your lens less expensive and it makes your lens lighter. And so these are the lenses that a lot of people like to use simply because they're a little bit lighter. And then at the same time, they're a little bit less expensive. So you have what's called a variable f-stop lens. Okay, just a little FYI there. So now you see what your lens does. Your lens controls your f-stops. So the second number that we need to get your light meter in the middle is called your shutter speed. And your shutter speed is inside your camera. So inside your camera, there is a shutter that opens and closes, and that shutter opens and closes to let light come through the lens, and then that light hits the sensor. So you have the light coming through the lens, and then you have the shutter opening and closing. The shutter stops movement or blurs movement. And when you bought your lens, excuse me, when you bought your camera came with a certain number of shutter speeds. So shutter stops movement or blurs movement. So in this scene from Costa Rica that you're seeing on the screen, I want you to see all the way down the river. I want you to see every detail. I want you to see all the vegetation. So this is a photograph where I want the viewer to stay. I want the viewer to look. I want the viewer to stay inside the photo and look at everything. So since you can see all of the depth of field, what f-stop do you think I'm using? Look at your chart.
32.
What now?
32.
20,
22.
30, 22 or 32, exactly. So you decide that you want to go and you want to take this landscape shot, and you know that you want to see, you want the viewer to see everything all the way up and down the river, then you would just automatically go in, set your camera up on your tripod, and you would set your f-stop to 22 or 32. And so, you know, now we've got that set. Now we've got to balance the light meter. So remember that little chart that you made just a little bit ago? Now we've got to balance the light meter because we've got to determine which shutter speed is going to put my light meter scale right in the middle. So I've selected, or we've selected, one f-stop. Let's use 32. I'll go to my chart. So I'm going to use F32. And when I use an F32, now I'm going to rotate my shutter speed dial. And I'll let you do this in just a moment. until the light meter scale goes right in the middle. And when you rotate your shutter, once you set one f-stop, when you rotate your shutter speed dial, there's going to be one number that puts your light meter right in the middle. And when I used F32, my light meter went right in the middle at 1/8 of a second. Okay. So now brain has to determine whether this is the photo that I want or not. And I'm going to take you back to my picture. F32 is going to let my viewer see everything in the scene. You see the water in this picture? You see how it's all blurry?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Water blurs at 1/8 of a second. If you look on your handout, water blurs at 1/8 of a second. So anytime I take a picture of moving water that's 1/8 of a second or slower, then my water is going to have this silky effect to it. And as photographers, once you learn how to blur your water, you will blur your water every single time, because moving water always blurs at 1/8 of a second or slower. So camera's got to be on a tripod. So I know in taking that photograph that I want to use F32 because I want to see everything in the scene. And just by coincidence, for illustration purposes in this class, my shutter speed balanced the light meter at 1/8 of a second. So then brain has to say F32, I can see everything, depth of field, 1/8 of a second, the water is going to be blurry, just like Kathy said in class. That's when you go, bingo, that's exactly what I was looking for. Take the picture. So now shutter's going to open and shutter's going to close. And that long shutter speed of 1/8 of a second means that that water is going to be blurry. But who was it that had an F22? Who couldn't get to an F32? Who got to F22? One of you all said you got F22. Jola, you got F22?
Might have been.
I did see
Yeah.
F22, but
Uh-huh.
after playing around with it a little bit more, it went to 32.
It went to 32? Okay. Okay. So if
Yeah.
somebody couldn't get 32, but because of their lens construction, because remember your f-stops are in your lens. So every lens you buy is going to have the same little order of numbers, but it may not have all the numbers going all the way down or all the numbers going all the way up. So it's just as strictly in its lens construction. If somebody only had F22 and they were standing right next to me and we had the same field of view, if they dialed in F22, their shutter speed, their light meter would balance at a 1/15 of a second. And why a 1/15 of a second? Because F22 is a little bit more of an opening. And as a result, it's going to need a little bit more faster of a shutter speed because it's got more light coming through. But watch this, because I can also balance my light meter F16 at 30, and I can balance my light meter at 11 at 60, and I can balance my light meter at 8 at 1/25th, and I can balance my light meter at 6.8, and I can balance my light meter at 5.6 and 500th. So you have, when you are balancing your light meter in the manual mode, a wide variety of places where you can put that scale in the middle. The right place is based on what you want your picture to look like. And so it all depends on what you want your picture to look like, whether you're going to balance it at 5.6 at 500 or 6.8 at 250 or F32 at 1/8 of a second. So when you're in the manual mode, you have a wide variety of places where your light meter will balance. And you're going to work on this in your homework assignment over the next week before I see you on next Monday, by the way. Each one of these where your light meter goes right in the middle will give you the exact same colors and light in the photograph. What will change is whether we stop movement at 500th of a second or blur movement at 1/8 of a second. What will change is whether we have a shallow depth of field at 5.6 or a lot of depth of field at 32. So which combination of f-stop and shutter speed you use to balance your light meter is all based on what you want your picture to look like. So now you're going to have to make some choices. But you've got to understand also what's happening so that you can see what's going on. So for example, this is that same river with a faster shutter speed. And look at your handout. So this is 1/25th of a second. The faster the shutter speed is, the bigger the number, the faster the shutter speed is. The slower the shutter speed is, the smaller the number. This is 1/25th of a second at whatever it turns out to be, where it's 1/25th comes up to be on this chart, 8. That's 1/25th of a second at f8. And that's f32 at 1/8 of a second. That's 1/25th at f8. And that's 1/8 of a second shutter speed at f32. You see how the light is exactly the same? So the light is exactly the same because I balance the light meter. The effect is different. So the light is exactly the same, but the effect is different. And this is where you've got to become aware of when you change an f-stop, what it does, and when you change a shutter speed, what it does. Because you're constantly trying to change the effect that you might get. Questions real fast? Are y'all holding on? Barely by a thread? Yeah, okay. So if you look at this photo of Venice, you don't know what shutter speed I'm using and what f-stop I'm using, but you can see all the way down the canal, right? So roughly what f-stop do you think I'm using? Look at your chart. What f-stop do you think I'm using?
32.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're just guessing, you know, but if you look at it, you can see all the way down the canal. So it looks like I'm at, you know, at f32. Notice that the water is blurred. So if the water is blurred, roughly what shutter speed am I using? Where did I tell you where water blurs?
8.
1/8 of a second. Good. So you don't know what shutter speed I'm using, but you know that the water's blurred. So that tells you, okay, so she's about 1/8 of a second or slower. Remember, it's 1/8 of a second or slower. And then you notice that the people are blurred. See the people over on the left? So they're ghosts. You see those? So also people, when they move. So it's not just water, it's also people. So this person, this smudgy person way over on the left is moving a little bit faster, so we don't see them at all. The lady with the bag where my cursor is, she stopped for a second and then moved. So we got a little bit of an imprint of her, but then she, you know, she kind of smudged out. Notice the guy with the white bag in his hand? He's stopping and looking through that window. So, you know, he's stopping a little bit more, so he's a bit more solid. But everybody else going up and down the stairs, because they're having to slow down on those stairs, they're a little bit less solid. But watch what happens if I speed up the shutter speed. So if I speed up the shutter speed, you can see the gondolas. If I slow down the shutter speed, you can't see the gondolas. See the guy with the white bag? He's still there. So if I don't use a fast enough shutter speed, I don't get any gondolas. If I want to stop the gondolas, then I have to choose the appropriate shutter speed to stop the gondolas. So you see how you've got to choose each one of these to see, and you have to make choices sometimes because the exact shutter speed you want and the exact f-stop you want, or chances are you're not going to get them. So if you want to see the gondolas moving through the water, then you have to have a faster shutter speed. If you want the gondolas to disappear, then you have a slower shutter speed. So your f-stop and your shutter speed, which ones you choose, give you the right light, but whether you choose the right ones for your photo are up to your brain. So you ready to try this on your own? You ready to try it on your own? Okay, f-stop's at 5.6,
Sure.
right? Yes, shake your head up and down. Everybody's got your f-stop at 5.6? Okay, good. Now I want you to point your camera at a light, overhead, a lamp, whatever. Point your camera at a light. And when you point your camera at a light, I want you now to rotate your shutter dial. And for all of you Canons, that's your front dial. And Jennifer, for your Nikon, that's your back dial. So no plus and holding anything. You've already set your f-stop. Now all you're doing is rotating your shutter speed dial until your scale goes right in the middle. So when your scale goes right in the middle, take the picture and yell out so I can hear you what shutter speed you got. So rotate your shutter speed dial until your scale goes right in the middle, and then yell out what shutter speed you got and take the picture.
A 40th?
40th, good, take the picture.
20.
20? Okay, take the picture. Good. Juana, Craig, Melissa, and Whitley, I haven't heard from you yet. Point your camera at the light and then take the picture and put the scale in the middle. Melissa, Whitley, Craig.
When's the 20th?
20th? Good, 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 good. Who was not sure?
Inside. Okay.
Huh?
Not sure where what number am I looking through?
So you've already got your 5.6, correct?
Yes.
Yes, good. Now push your shutter button halfway down to turn everything on, and then start rotating your shutter speed dial. That's the one up by your pinky finger in the front. Start rotating that and you'll see it start moving. And when you get it right in the middle, take your picture and tell me what shutter speed put it right in the middle. I heard somebody click.
Like the numbers on the bottom?
Yeah. I hear clicking going on. Jola and Jennifer, you all have got it?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
Jola and Jennifer, point your camera down at someplace dark, like down on the floor. Juana and Craig and Melissa and Whitley, you all keep going. Tell me what shutter speed you got when the scale goes right in the middle. Whitley, did you get it?
I got it on, we got it on the D10, but not on the other one.
Okay.
We
Now,
couldn't get it.
we already
Yeah.
know that Jola and Jennifer are getting like a 20 and a 40. So that tells you it's a slow number. So what's the number that you're seeing through your viewfinder? Juana, what's the number you're seeing that your shutter is changing to?
Well, I don't. I see an 8 and then 5.6.
You see an 8 and then a 5.6? And then is the scale right in the middle?
Just moving it.
Craig, how you doing?
Terrible.
Terrible. You can't do
I had
terrible.
the scale in the middle, now it's not.
Yeah, it's real sensitive.
It's-
When
the
you
scale was in
move,
the middle. And
when you move, it'll move off. So you gotta click as soon as you get it right in the middle. Because it's real sensitive.
Mhm.
Did you get it, Juana?
I saw now 5 and then a 5.6.
Good. That's your f-stop. Remember, stay at 5.6 on your f-stop. You're changing your shutter speed. So don't push your plus minus button. Only rotate your front dial with your forefinger. Got it?
Okay, I'm in the middle now.
Take the picture. Click. Don't move. Take the picture once you get it.
Eh,
Juana, did you
what
get
the
it?
number is that I was looking for.
So I'm moving.
Huh?
The scale keeps on moving.
Yeah, the scale's sensitive. It'll move. So you gotta click as soon as you get it. There you go. Did you get it?
Yes.
Yay. Everybody got it now. Craig, you've got it. Now point your camera down at the floor, Juana, and do the same thing on the dark area of your room. It'll be real slow underneath your floor, underneath your desk. Jennifer and Jola, did y'all find that when you were underneath the desk? It was really slow, right?
Yes,
Very
very
blurry.
slow. Almost
Very
thought I
slow.
broke it.
Yes, you didn't break it. You didn't break it. No, you did not. You balanced your light meter. Whitley and Melissa, same thing. Did you all get nice slow shutter speeds? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, good,
it's like a
good.
4 and it was really.
Did it stay open a long time?
Mhm.
And then Juana and Craig? Okay, now pull the picture up on the back of your camera. So you pull the picture up on the back of your camera. That's the little tiny blue rectangle facing toward the right. Pull the picture up on the back of your camera. And you all did not take great pictures in class tonight. I can attest to that. But does it look like the room? Does it look like the light in your room?
No,
No, why not, Jennifer?
mine's coming out. Mine's brighter.
Oh, yours is brighter.
It's darker in the room.
It's
Then,
coming out pretty
yes.
bright.
Some of them do.
But some of them okay?
Yes.
Good. Jola, how they looking?
Yeah, for mine, when I pointed it towards the light, except for the bulb, everything else is pretty dark.
Yes.
And then when I went to the dark area,
Yeah.
that part, it took like maybe about eight seconds for
Yes.
it, but
So it's
that
blurred.
part came out lighter.
A little
Yeah,
bit
it's
lighter.
blurry.
Yeah, and it's blurred. Okay. So to everybody, Melissa Whitley, what's it look like? Does it look like it's in this room? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, these aren't great
we
pictures.
point-
But it looks like it's in this room, right? Juana,
Yeah.
how about yours?
The one that took up the light is showing, and then around it is blurred.
It's blurry, huh? Yeah, or
Yeah.
movement. Craig, how's it look? Now don't
Blurry.
point your yeah, there you go. Don't point your camera at the brightest light, but just point your camera at, something that's kind of in the mid range, f5.6. Melissa and Whitley, you all just point your cameras at each other, okay? Just point your cameras at each other. Yeah. So just point your camera. Jennifer, I saw a cat wander by a little bit ago. Just point your camera at a book or a book or a vase or your water glass, and use 5.6 and put your scale right in the middle. Hold your camera nice and steady because you've got dark rooms, and then take the picture. And Jennifer, look through the viewfinder.
Do you like that?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Get used to looking through the viewfinder. And then how's that one look? Okay, so Melissa and Whitley have good pictures because they at least laughed at them. Yeah. So how's the picture of how's it look? Jola, how'd it look? Craig, how'd it look? Jennifer, Juana?
Can't see me.
And
Oh,
we're
there's
looking
some-
at the light.
Dark
A
one.
little bit of blur.
Little bit of blur.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, you
okay.
have to
That's
pause.
okay. We're just looking at the light. We just want the light to be roughly the same as what you have. Craig, how's it look? Yeah. Let me see. Oh yeah, you
Does
got
my
it.
flash thing keep going up?
Pop your flash
Should the
down.
flash
Keeps
thing keep-
popping up. Mhm. If you're in the M mode, that flash should not keep popping up unless you're accidentally punching the button. Yeah. And Juana, how's it looking? Whitley and Melissa got it. I can tell. They're laughing. Juana, how's it looking?
That wasn't too bad.
It's I took the one of the light, and I see the light is the focus point, and then everything else is blurred.
Okay. 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 So this is balancing your light meter. Okay. So when you balance your light meter, everybody's got that little scale going right in the middle, correct? And by the way, if you keep rotating the dial and the scale is jammed up against the left side or the right side and nothing happens, rotate the dial the other direction because you've gone as far as you can. And so you've got to go the other direction. So don't just keep, furiously rotating the dial. So if the dial doesn't go, if the scale doesn't go anywhere, go the other direction, see what's going on there. Okay, so you have now balanced your light meter. It doesn't mean it was a beautiful picture, but you have balanced your light meter. So when you're balancing your light meter, on your handout, I want to give you a handful of shutter speeds that you need to think about, because if you rotate your shutter dial, everybody, don't worry about balancing your light meter. Just look at the top of your camera. How fast will your shutter speed go? Rotate your shutter speed dial all the way to 4,000 or 8,000.
4,000.
4,000.
4,000.
4,000. Good. 4,000.
I have
Jola?
8,000.
You have 8,000, right? And the 10D should have 8,000,
Yeah.
correct? Melissa or Whitley, who's got the 10D? It's 4,000?
I think it was.
Should go to 8,000. Yeah. Everybody else should go to 4,000, correct? Shake your head up and down. Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good, good. Now rotate your shutter speed the other direction all the way. And how slow does your shutter speed go? Keep rotating it until you get to quotation marks. Tell me what your quotation marks are when you see quotation marks. Yeah, bulb.
30.
30 with
30.
quotation marks.
I have 30 and then bulb.
Good. So
30
30
quotation
with
marks, but then I
quotation
also have
marks
bulb.
is 30 seconds, literally 30 seconds of leaving your shutter open, which is a long time. You will never know how long 30 seconds is until you're sitting there waiting because you blew it and you messed something up or you kicked your tripod and now you got to wait 30 seconds. It is forever. And bulb is you hold the shutter down as long as you want to using a cable release. Juana and Craig, did you all see 30 seconds?
Yes.
Yes,
did.
good, good, good. Craig, did you see 30 seconds?
No, I'm just listening because I'm lost.
No, you're not lost.
It's
You can
okay.
do it.
I got a pool in the backyard. Maybe that's where this should go.
No, it should not go there. So your shutter speed goes all the way from 4,000 or 8,000 all the way down to 30 seconds. Anytime you see the quotation marks, that's full seconds, by the way, or quarters of seconds. So you have a ton of shutter speeds. So on your handout, I have given you 5 shutter speeds that you can use as benchmarks. 1/8 of a second, you know that the water's going to blur. 1/15 of a second, like in this branch on a redbud tree, 1/15 of a second will stop gentle movement, a branch just gently blowing in the wind. 1/15 of a second will stop gentle movement. 1/60th of a second is what you need for a living creature. So 1/60th of a second, if somebody's blinking their eyes, cat's blinking its eyes, dog's blinking its eyes, moving its head from side to side, you need at least a 1/60th of a second shutter speed. Remember, I told you all how to move your focus points around? Top right-hand camera on all the Canons, on Nikons, top right-hand button right here on your Canon cameras. And on Nikons, Canons are right here also. On Nikons, you're toggling. That toggle, Jennifer, on the back of your camera. You want to move your focus points around. You don't want to use only the center focus points, and you don't want to use all the focus points. If you use all the focus points, the camera chooses where it focuses and you're not choosing where you focus. So you want to choose to focus on the cat's eye. So Canons need to get used to punching that topmost right-hand button, rotate your front dial, or Jola, you have that little toggle. See that little teeny weeny toggle in the middle of your camera, Jola? On the back, little teeny weeny little round knob that goes all different directions.
Right?
Yeah. If you punch your focus points over on the right-hand side, now you can move your focus points all over the place using that little toggle switch. So you can move your focus points around. This makes your pictures a lot more interesting. So several years ago, somebody photographed a family member's wedding, and they used the center focus point on every single photograph in the whole wedding album. That is boring as all get out. So you want to be able to move your focus points around to create photographs that have more interest. So that little focus knob right there, that little focus button, and then you can use your back dial or your front dial to move around. So you want to have one individual focus point set. Get ready for where, anticipate. So for instance, this lion was laying in the grass, and when the guide told me she's going to raise her head up, she's going to look around and she's going to walk off, I put a focus point up at the top activated. So when she raised up, I focused on her eyes. And then in fact, she did look around and walk off. So think about where those focus points are up on his eyes. So moving your focus points around makes your photos a whole lot more interesting. 1/60th of a second, I told you, for living creatures, 250 for the man on the horse in the Go Texas parade. So you've got to anticipate what the movement is and how fast is your shutter speed going to need to be. 250 is what we need for the little guy in the swing. Not a big kid in the swing, just a little guy in a swing. But we need 250th of a second shutter speed to stop that movement. Notice how the focus points off to the side, and I've used a shutter speed that's fast enough to freeze the bird. But because now the bird's over on the side, just creates a different photograph. So being able to move those focus points around so that you can create photographs that are interesting. 500th of a second is what would stop something like the whale's tail. And you see the water drops coming off the whale's tail? See the water drops? Water forms balls at 500th of a second. At 250th of a second, water blurs. At 1/8 of a second, water blurs. 500th of a second, water forms balls. So if you want to stop the splash, then you're going to have a 500th of a second or faster. So your shutter speed stops movement. That's the first thing you would dial in, and then dial in the f-stop to balance your light meter. So your f-stop controls how much we see and don't see. Shutter speed controls how much movement we stop and how much movement we don't stop. And in the event that we don't have enough shutter speed, then we have this thing called ISO, the fourth component: light meter, f-stop, shutter speed, and ISO. Do you see where your ISO button is on your camera? See where your ISO button? Most of you have an ISO button that's pretty easy to reach. If not, then you've got where you can just go in your display panel and you can see ISO. But a lot of you all have an ISO button that's just right on the outside of the camera. Here we are in Morocco, and we're going to photograph the stars at night in the Sahara Desert, and the men have made dinner for us and they're playing music. And I'm not going to walk away from this scene and fail to take any photographs of it. So I put my camera on a tripod. I dial in my f-stop. I'm not going to do f22 because that's going to make the aperture nice and small. So I'm going to go ahead and do like an f5.6 or a 6.8. The men are drumming and they're moving around, but to stop the hands on the drums, I would need about a 500, if not 1,000. But I just settle on stopping their moving bodies. So I use a 60th of a second shutter speed, but my light meter won't balance. So I punch my ISO and raise my ISO. And by raising the ISO, it allows me to get a faster and faster and faster shutter speed. So if you can't get the shutter speed you want, then you can punch the ISO button, raise the ISO, and that'll let me get a faster and faster shutter speed. Make sense? So in this case, it's about an ISO of 32,000. And it's, it's grainy. If I blow it up, that's what's called grainy. But then we have software in Adobe to where we can smooth out the grain and make the photo look a little bit better. But I'll never get the hands back because I didn't have a fast enough shutter speed, but that's okay. I got the photo. And so the ISO allows us to raise the ISO in the event that we need to get us a faster shutter speed. The newer camera you have and the more expensive camera you have, the better your highest ISO will be. So this photo of a Jaguar in Brazil was photographed with Canon's most expensive SLR camera at a very high ISO. I'm probably going into the 26,000 ISO here, but it doesn't look bad because I'm using the more expensive camera. The higher the ISO, the worse the photograph is going to look. The way that I look at it, though, as a photographer, if I want the photo, I want the photo. And so if I need to raise my ISO all the way to the top limits, and it allows me to get the photo of the abominable snowman walking across my yard, then I'm going to raise my ISO all the way. So that ISO is just there in the event that we need it. How high you raise it is all up to your personal taste and how you tolerate high ISO. Some people tolerate it well, some people don't tolerate it. So that's something for you to play with and see. So, thing like a perfume shop in Italy where I take people when we go to Florence, we just go in and raise our ISO until we get a 60th of a second shutter speed, because that's what we need to just basically hold the camera. And now we can walk around and take photos in a dimly lit, beautiful store. So we can raise the ISO to get our shutter speed in the event that we need to. Two little boys were across the table from me playing on their iPad. I wanted a picture of them. You can see it's a dimly lit room. So I just put the camera on the table, raised the ISO, and rotated my shutter speed to 60th of a second, put my f-stop there so that I could get my light meter in the middle. And then I put the focus point on their face. You got to watch it. Otherwise the camera would focus on the sausage. That's not where you want the focus to be. You want the focus to be on the face. And then I took the picture without the kids even know I was taking the picture, but it's a high ISO photograph. So in the event you can't get the shutter speed you want, then you can raise the ISO and that'll let you get a higher and higher and higher shutter speed. Fast shutter speed or slow shutter speed for lightning?
Fast.
Fast.
Fast shutter speed or slow shutter speed for lightning? Slow shutter speed. If it's a fast shutter speed, I would get just a little segment of the lightning. If I use a 30 seconds, that's 30 with the quotation marks, leave the shutter open. As the lightning dances across the sky, I capture it as it moves all throughout the sky. Acrobat flipping through the air, fast shutter speed or slow shutter speed?
Fast.
Fast, exactly. This is 4,000th of a second shutter speed. The first time she jumped for me, I only used 1,000 and she blurred. So I had to say, would you please do that again? Don't tell her why, just ask her to do it again. Okay. And then I used 4,000th of a second shutter speed. If you're in something like the gymnasium and you can't get a super fast shutter speed without a really exorbitant ISO, then don't worry about it. Blur some movement. Some blurred movement is okay. Blur some movement. It's okay. Every bit of movement does not have to be solid. And then the last thing I want to leave you with, because I know you're tired and I want to get out of here. The last thing I'll leave you with is this histogram on the back of your cameras. So pull your picture up on the back of the camera. Just pull one picture up. It doesn't have to be a good one or anything. And then punch your INFO button 1 times, 2 times, or 3 times. And Jennifer, you've got to toggle up 1 time, 2 times, 3 times on your Nikon camera.
Mhm.
Did you see it?
Yeah.
And you got
Yes, I got it.
histogram? Oh, I love you. Thank you very much. You
Yes.
followed the instructions. Yeah. Okay. All you Canon users, push the info button 1 times, 2 times, 3 times, and you see this histogram showing up. Everybody see it? Okay. How we read this, because this tells you whether in fact you did capture a good photograph. In this photograph of the cat sleeping on the couch, the sun was in the top left-hand corner. I wanted the sun to come through that window and be super bright. So when I took the first photograph, it gave me this first histogram. And what your histogram shows you is your whitest white pixels with no detail are the y-axis, the straight up and down axis over here on this right side. On the left side, all the way over here, that is your blackest black pixel. No detail whatsoever, solid black. Everything in between is this photograph converted to black and white and all the different black and white tones graphed. So when you look at a histogram, we want it to go all the way from the left corner all the way to the right corner, but we do not want it to spike up the right side. Have you all seen your blinks, the highlight indicator, the blinks on the back of your camera? Yeah. Okay. You want that highlight indicator turned on. Canon's, it's in your blue menu, and Jennifer, you've already found yours, I suspect. That blinking, Jennifer, that's on your next screen. Everybody else in Canon should see it all on one screen. That blink tells you where you blew it on that photograph. Wherever it is blinking, there is no data. So in the first photograph that I took of this cat, the corner was blinking at me, and that's okay because the sun's up there. I know that's going to blink. But the floor was blinking, the couch was blinking, and the white fur on the cat was blinking. So all of that area was blinking. That's that top histogram. Sorry, that's that top histogram. Wherever it's blinking, I blew it. There's nothing there. So I had to retake the picture, but instead of balancing the light meter like I've taught you all tonight, I only took it to 1 step minus because the photo was too bright for the camera to handle. So instead of balancing the light meter, I did it 1 step to the minus. Took the picture, the corner's still blinking, the floor's not blinking, the couch is not blinking, but the cat is blinking. That means there's no detail on the cat. So this photograph was taken 2 stops underexposed. So on your light meter scale, 2 big notches toward the negative. And I did that based on the histogram. The histogram guided me. So if you take your picture, check your histogram, see whether you've got the histogram going all the way over to the right side, not spiking up the right side. If it spikes up the right side and you have highlight indicators, you need to take the picture again, but underexposed by 1. And in this case with the cat, I had to underexpose by 2. So this histogram is super important. And you need to consult it when you're taking pictures. I leave that screen set on the back of my camera so that when I look at my picture, I'm not looking at my picture, I'm looking at the histogram. After I get the exposure right, the histogram has a point on the left all the way to a point on the right. Then I'll look to see whether I've got smiles and all that other stuff in the photograph. So putting the scale in the middle balances your light meter, but sometimes the scene is too bright for the camera to handle or too dark. And then we've got to underexpose or overexpose. Got it? And I know I just threw a ton of stuff at you. So you have 2 homework assignments that you're going to complete over the next week. One is you're going to photograph moving water like a fountain or a garden hose, or if you have one of those waterfalls in your backyard or at the beginning of your subdivision, you could do that. But you've got to keep your camera on a tripod or maybe even a stool so that it's stable. And then following along on your handout, you're going to set your f-stop, balance with your shutter speed, and then keep moving all the way through the scale, taking pictures. If you do it right, every single one of the pictures will look the same, except the water will go from solid to blurred. Then you're going to put an object on a stool 8-10 feet away from its background. All this is in your handout. And you're going to photograph changing your f-stop. And you're going to see whether we don't see the background to see the background. And if you do it right, every single one of the pictures will look exactly alike. Now, I know it's going to rain tomorrow, and I know it's cold outside, so you can do these in the house, but they're a little bit better if you do them outside. But you can do them in the house if you need to, okay? Tomorrow, I'm going to send you the recording of the class. I'm going to send you a link to my Dropbox. So if you would like to put your pictures in my Dropbox, you can do that. If you have a WeTransfer or a Dropbox and you want to put your photos in your Dropbox and then send them to me, send me a link, then we can do it that way as well. But I need your pictures by, say, Sunday afternoon of next week, Monday morning at the latest. And then I'll put them in the slideshow and we can show them to each other and we can talk about them next week. Okay. So you do your homework and then I'll see you back here next Monday night, same time, same place. Questions before I leave you?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So in one of the pictures that I took, the histogram, the center of it has a spike, but there's no spike on the far left or the far right.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of wondering that does the quality of like a good photo mean that there's an even sort of hill on the histogram? Or
nope, because it's all depending on the colors. So if we were out at an air show and we were photographing airplanes going overhead, most of the color in the photograph would be the blue sky. So there would be a spike right in the middle of the histogram. And that's what you got, is you got that spike. So we don't want necessarily a bell curve on a histogram because it's just all the different colors throughout the photograph. That's what the ups and downs are. But if it's an ideal photograph, I would like it to begin on the left and end on the right. I'd like to capture all the tones in the photograph. Good question. Anybody else? Okay, I'm here all week. If you get stuck, send me an email. I'll try to help you out. And then if you need any help, if you get stuck on homework or something like that, or you don't understand something, then just, send me an email. I'm here. I'll help you out. And then I look forward to seeing all your pictures next week, and working on these 2 homework assignments, hopefully, is going to stick all this f-stop and shutter speed in your head. So when I see you next week, you'll have a lot better understanding of this f-stop and shutter speed. Everybody good? Okay. Good night,
Yes,
guys.
thank
I will
you.
see you next week, and I'll send you your recording tomorrow. Okay.
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 Thank you.
Good night, everybody.